Hey everybody, welcome back. It is Friday, so it's been about a week now that we've been away from school. Hopefully, you have become comfortable with this online delivery of content. If not, please reach out to me and let me know, and I will try my best to make it as comfortable a process for you as possible. Um, Before we start with today's lecture, I just want to make something aware to you. Um, all of the stuff that is on our D12, it is available to you. You have access to it. You have access to everything, the presentations, all the slides, any sort of documents that are on D12. If for whatever reason you find that you do not, or you see that it says you have no permission, chances are you're just using um, an account that is not your @Learn account. So please make sure that you are using your @Learn account to have access to everything. That's the only reason why it wouldn't work for you. If you're having problems accessing anything, the activity guides or anything, let me know, and I will try my best to get them to you, because I know that you don't have the hard copies. And if you were here that last week before we left, I would have given you the booklet. If not, remember, it's all on D12. The content is all there for you. So yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to please email me, and I will get back to you as soon as possible. But today, we are going to continue on where we left off yesterday. Yesterday we saw the birth of two new European empires or kingdoms, whatever you want to call them, with Germany and Italy being created. Um, so we saw the introduction of national interest. In the cases of Germany, Italy, a national interest was unification, bringing together the pieces of this region, be it in Germany or be it in Italy, and bring them together and create a new country, a unified and strong country that is based on ethnic national lines. All Italians now were a part of a country. The majority of Germans were now a part of Germany, but remember we talked about Austria being forced out. But give it a few years and a world war, and then we'll see them come together. But we'll save that for a later date. So if you're following along on the presentation, this is slide 24, or this is page 6 of your activity guide. In your summary, you should be trying to answer this question: how has nationalism affected the world? Um, this is a very, very important question to try to understand, because nationalism has played a big impact on the world, and we will address this question throughout this unit when we talk about imperialism, and we'll also address it when we talk about ultranationalism, the next unit, though. So we're going to continue, and as usual, if you have any questions or concerns, either comment them or email them to me. So, terms that are going to be introduced today are imperialism and ethnocentrism. Imperialism, you may have a good idea of. If not, don't worry, it'll be very clear to you. And the other one is ethnocentrism. If you have no idea what that means, do not worry. Like I said, we will work through that together. And you probably understand ethnocentrism, you just didn't realize that's what it was called. So I will enlighten you, as always, to how these concepts affect nationalism in our course. So let's start with imperialism. So if you really want a good understanding of imperialism, but you don't really like history, and you find it boring, you find reading boring, you find the YouTube videos about it boring, watch the Star Wars movies. That is a good idea of imperialism. Um, I would strongly encourage you to watch the from Rogue One to episode 4, 5, and 6. That is the height of imperialism in Star Wars. But watch all of them; they're great. That's enough of my advocating for Star Wars because they're not actually paying me to say this. Wish they were though. We'd get some pretty good effects going on this video if we were getting supplied with some Disney money. Anyways, so the Industrial Revolution affected European powers in many ways. We briefly talked about the Industrial Revolution. The increased productivity and wealth caused the powers to believe that the sky was the limit. They started to see that they could mass produce things. They were creating things on a grander scale. They had factories that were propping up in all cities across their countries. So they could manufacture goods. They could build bigger and better things like ships that allowed them to travel farther, to conquer new land. And when they got to this new land, they realized, hey, there's stuff here we can use. So they were going to take that stuff, bring it back to Europe, and keep the fires of industrialization going. And this is where imperialism comes in. Because when they get to these new places, they're going to see that, hey, this stuff is useful. Let's not just leave here. Let's stick around here. Oh, and if there's people here, well, great. We can either sell them the stuff or we can use them to help us get these raw materials. So the European powers began to openly compete for foreign lands to fuel their industrial engines, accumulate wealth, acquire rare and precious commodities. So these Europeans are now spreading out their influence. They're going to these places and they're sticking around. They find things there that they want to keep. Think of industrialization like a fire. You're camping, there's a fire in front of you. You notice it's starting to go out. What do? Well, you throw sticks in there, you throw maybe paper in there, or if you're really aggressive and eager, you'll throw gasoline or kerosene or some sort of lighter fluid in there and it'll really go. That's how the Europeans kind of saw the world and these goods. They needed more goods to come in to feed that fire. That's why they were sticking around in places like North America and South America, Africa, Asia, and the Pacific, because they saw that, hey, the more we stick around here, the more we take, the more land that we can, the more land we take, the more stuff we can bring back. But then you're going to see competition. So in the beginning, the start of imperialism, the Spanish and the Portuguese are the first ones to start to colonize. So Spain colonizes South and Central America, and the Portuguese, the coast of Africa and parts of India. But then they start to become less and less influential when we see the rise of England and France. So they're going to fight over goods because in these new places they are introduced to new things that we kind of take for granted now. So things like chocolate and tobacco. In the New World, when it's brought to Europe, it's like, this is the best stuff I've ever seen. I want more and I will pay more to get it. Once there is a demand, you're going to want to get a constant supply going. That's basic economics. And this is what will fuel this expansion. This is what imperialism is. It's the conquering of places. And these places are not empty. These places have people. And they're going to use these people as labor to get the raw materials. They're also going to use these people to buy the goods. So when we get to a later slide, you're going to see what I mean. So the idea of imperialism states that the most powerful nation would have the most prosperous colonial possessions. So they looked around the world, and there was, if there was Twitter back then, they would be tweeting these things all the time. Although I think Twitter is sort of dead, so maybe it would be like these TikTok videos that were coming out. Spain would be talking about South America, how they found tons and tons and tons of gold and silver in the mines of Peru and Bolivia. The French would be talking about Indochina, so modern day Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, and even Thailand. And the rich teas and spices and silks that came out of there. England would have been boasting about India, the precious gems, the teas, the coffee, all the stuff that was coming out of there. And they thought to themselves that these are the crowning things that we need to take control of, and we need to get more. And the British are going to be the ones that kind of, take the lead on this. They're going to be the ones that expand the fastest. Probably one of the reasons that they're so good at this is because they don't have to worry about neighbors. If you're France, you're worrying about Spain, you're worrying about, now you're going to be worrying about Germany. If you're Austria, you're worrying about Russia, you're worrying about the Ottoman Empire, now you're worrying about Italy, France, all these things. They have neighbors close by that have been fighting with each other for hundreds of years. Now the English, they're an island. They've never had to really deal with it, so they've been able to build themselves up a very powerful navy. And at the height of the imperial age, Britain controlled 1/5 of the world's population. That is incredible for such a small place. If you Google England, the size of it, and then you Google the British Empire and the size of that, you're going to be astonished to see that such a small country was able to conquer, what does that say? 1/4 of the world's area. The saying that the sun never sets on the British Empire shows you its expansion. Essentially what it's saying is they had a piece of territory all over the world. So no matter what, it's always daytime somewhere. That means that it was always sunny in one part of the empire. So the three major imperial powers towards the start of the 20th century is England, France, and Germany. Germany comes late, but they are very eager and they're very hungry. So after 1871, they have established themselves as a kingdom. They expand. They're going to take places in Africa, modern day Cameroon and modern day Togo. In West Africa, they're going to take Tanzania and Namibia, basically in southwest and eastern Africa. They're also going to go to the Pacific and take some islands there. So they start to get a small empire because everything else has been taken. If you look at the maps of the Scramble for Africa, for example, you're going to see that Germany's kind of left out, but they do make their way in. The Japanese and the United States enter the scene as well in the 1890s. So we'll see Japan will start to gain confidence in the east and acquire some territories in the South Pacific. The United States, again, will also gain some confidence, and it will fight the Spanish in the Caribbean and kick them out of Cuba, for example. In the 1890s, they have the Spanish-American War, where the Americans were actually able to take part Puerto Rico, and they'll take the Philippines as well away from the Spanish. So towards the end of the 1890s into the 20th century, the 1900s, Spain is kind of a lesser power now. They've kind of fallen behind. So we'll see what happens with these up-and-coming powers. So if you're following along on slide 27, here is a video of the Industrial Revolution. I am going to, in the comments, put a very good video done by, I think it's Time Magazine, about child labor in the Industrial Revolution, because it was a thing. And if you all were born in the Industrial Revolution, you wouldn't be watching this video, that's for sure. A, because it wouldn't exist, but also because you'd be working. And you would have been working for a very long time now. So this is a very good crash course video. If you don't want to watch that, then I encourage you to watch the video that I post in the description. So once you've done that, you'll get a good understanding of how the Industrial Revolution really started to get things going in terms of imperialism and the conquest of the world. So again, on slide 28, this map here, this is a map of the British Empire at that time. I wish that I could read if what this map had a date on it, but it does not. This is very early on. The way that you can tell it's very early on is because you look at places like Africa, um, Egypt, Sudan, Kenya. All these places are not yet acquired by the British, but they will be. Um, so there is that, and then in where modern day India is, it'll also reach into Burma as well. So this is an early map, but if you are curious, you can Google it, and you can see some more maps. So now we'll get into this idea of ethnocentrism. Ethnocentrism is a byproduct of imperialism. The reason I say it's a byproduct is because ethnocentrism is judging all cultures through your culture's eyes. So essentially viewing your culture as superior to others. The only way that you'll be able to do that is by actually meeting other cultures. So when the Europeans get to these places, they meet people. You know, in North America, they're meeting the First Nations people. In South America, they're meeting the Inca, and in Central America, the Maya, the Aztec. In Africa, they're meeting tribes of people. In Asia, they're meeting again different peoples, and even in the Pacific as well. When they meet these people, obviously they are very different. Their clothing is different. Their structure of society is different. Even their housing is different. And the Europeans are going to judge their cultures based on the standard of European culture. Sorry, I kind of got myself all confused. Not confused, but anyways, they're going to have a baseline, and that's the European standard, and they're going to look at everyone else, and they're going to see that they are below that standard. Therefore, they are going to see them as inferior and as needing the help of the Europeans to kind of drag them along to this point, to this line of what is deemed civilized. So they will go to places like North America, and they will see indigenous people, the way they're dressed, and see that they live in teepees. And they're going to think to themselves, this is how they live? They don't even have land ownership. They don't even have houses. Their houses are rolled up cloth and wood. Let's help these people because we're coming from a place where castles exist, and cities like London or Paris or Rome have been around for hundreds of years, and stone structures. What they don't really understand is it's not a matter of superior and inferior. It's more a matter of utility. What works for what environment? It works for the Europeans to have things like castles and stone buildings because they needed them to defend against other Europeans.